Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond. I'm really lucky today to be joined by Robert from Tensorflight. Robert is, well, we were discussing this beforehand. He's had every role, but his current role is he is co-founder and he is currently Chief Product Officer. That is the current title, but you were just explaining to me, which jobs haven't you held within the business?
Yeah, I was joking that every role in the company I've done for a while, right? Like initially, I was coding everything, then the right people to cover that. I was selling, then some different people were doing that. Then I was doing marketing. Some people to cover that, and now I'm on the role of product, that I'm kind of prioritizing where the product goes, and this actually requires understanding all of those aspects. So this is right, given my experience, where kind of product needs to know a little bit of everything and prioritize and decide where are we going to go, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say to you about that. I think it's really interesting that that's been the journey, because yeah, the best product people I know do know about sales, they do know about marketing, they understand the kind of underlying technology aspect, whether they come from a technical background or not, and I know that you do. So yeah, that kind of really broad view, and particularly the interaction between customers is so important to product development.
Yeah, because it's sometimes hard, like how are we prioritize, improving attribute replacement value versus moving tasks management system, how you prioritize, and how can you assign business value to both of those things, which one is more important to do now. And I think I have the right experience to have that type of decision.
Well, before we dive into it, because I've got loads of questions about product, actually, I find it a fascinating area of the business. So it'd be lovely if you could introduce Tensorflight, what it is you guys do, and what your offering is to the insurance industry.
Sure. So we are working, our core of our product is providing commercial property data, right? So you give us any building in the world, and we give you 20 building attributes, number of stories, construction type, square footage, replacement cost, occupancy type, roof material condition, facade material condition, geometry. And basically, we want to give information to insurers that they won't have to visit almost any properties in your portfolio. The goal is to, there is, if people ask us, like, what's the 5-year vision? For us, it's that commercial property insurance is fully automated, that, underwriting, it's all done through straight-through processing, and it's going in that direction. You see that there's a kind of commercial space got jealous of residential space and say, let's do the same, that everything goes online, at least on the SME side, but on the large commercial, that's happening as well. We kind of do a little bit of residential as well, but we kind of prioritize this very least just because there's too many companies, right? Like if you selling residential roof material and condition based on new map, I think there's 10 companies doing that right now, right? So it's in US, so it's kind of we're staying away from that area. But some areas, for example, we have a good replacement cost estimator, and some people are saying, hey, that could be useful on the residential side as a quick estimate when you don't have to go through CoreLogic varies key to value, but you need to quicker instant value. That's estimated. That's also useful, right? So we may be working a little bit on residential as well, but commercial is focused for us, just for the sake of that's where we've seen opening 5 years ago, and that's where we've been working for 5 years basically.
Yeah, and talk to me about the sort of practical aspect of how is it done? How do you deliver these values, this information?
Sure. So traditionally you had a few ways of getting property data, right? Like one is you send an inspector, right? But it's $500 is estimate of it's some is much more for inspecting larger properties, right? But if you premium is few times that, it's like eating up, inspection is eating up all your profits, right? So something maybe slightly less accurate, but would give you more ROI, right? And then the second thing that came is just public records, right? That's where traditionally CoreLogic is the largest player where they just go and aggregate all of the public records type of data, what the counties have, and just sell it as a product. But then, they've done a great job with that. But the problem is with underlying public data, right? It still needs to be updated over time, and because of that, it's quite old in many areas. In many areas, you would have like whole county, there's no public data at all, or it's very hard to get, right? Like first stories where you call sheriff and sheriff sends you a CD with property data for that county, right? Or a printout and you have to manually put it into your system, right? So there are stories like that where data is kind of inconsistent, old, with holes, right? And we base everything on vision. So we look at imagery from all kind of directions you can see at the property, and train machine learning models to predict those attributes. Mm-hmm. And the kind of one difference between what you see in the market is that there's so many companies looking at roofs, right? So how can you get this roofs attribute, which we also have, but that's not priority for us. For us is basically facades, right? Like everything except the roof. What kind of attributes can you extract from that, right? So we're looking at different sources, dash cams, different 360 ground imagery providers, oblique imagery, right? Like all kind of, maybe satellite imagery, slightly angled, shadows. So how can you look at all of this? How can you get visual information on everything except roof and extract it automatically and provide it to customer?
Interesting. Thank you for that. And so talk to me about, because you're not from the insurance industry originally. If I'm right, you started out internally at Microsoft. Sort of, you've got a software engineering background. Is that correct? And but then is Tensorflight 6.5 years old? Is that correct?
It's been quite a while, yeah.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated about the origin story, like every good Marvel nerd. What was the kind of personal mission that led you and your co-founder to start the Tensorflight business?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I worked at insurance at Google. That's funny story. That they had small insurance product where we were doing was Google Compare. We were working. I was working in that team for a year. So there is basically commercial unit at Google that was suggesting your insurance. So that was there's niche entry of Google into insurance. There's some kind of some signs they may enter insurance again, but just based on people they're hiring, right? I'm not saying anything I would know not from public information, right? So I was in that area. I also work for kind of quantitative hedge fund where it was on finance side where we were I seen the value of buying different data sets, how much data can be monetized, and basically what insurance is doing is very similar to trading stocks, basically, right? Like you have so many insurance backed securities like cat bonds, so it's same type of basically insurance are doing and managing a portfolio, right? They're kind of like investment firms in a lots of ways, right? And when we started Tensorflight, we kind of for first 6 months to year, we weren't that much focused on insurance, right? We were working with, we say we will do AI for aerial imagery. So we were working with drones, satellites, and for insurance and other industries as well. Like I remember that's always funny story of counting turkeys for accounting firm because that was hard problem for them, right? But at some point, investors, advisors says you have a bunch of these different projects. Just pick one that seems the most promising, the most exciting, can provide the most value to the industry, can be the most interesting for you. And given a few of stuff we had, right? Like I work of this couple insurance product, co-founders beginning of work at Google Street View. So that's when we went in that direction because we had lots of experience in that area.
Mm-hmm. And who are you within the insurance? Are you selling directly to underwriting teams? Do brokers show any interest? Who's buying this from you?
Sure. So actually the most, firstly, most of the names I can't mention direct names because there is, we've insurance industry will stopped exchanging business cards. We started exchanging NDAs when we meet each other. So a lot of we basically most of our stuff comes through API. So we have API where you can plug into Tensorflight and get it into your system. And it's actually mostly larger insurers like top 20, top 30, and we go into their pricing platforms. And there are a couple, I would say 2/3 is that type, and 1/3 is also API through different insurtechs where they do either they have either some type of platform, they do some type of additional analytics on top of that using our data, right? So that's where we mostly are. We kind of we are looking how can we go, of course, expand our market, because we think it's not just Fortune 500 insurers and insurtechs that can use our data. We've been that's one reason about some changes we mentioned, that we were maybe too techy company and we didn't really have good way of attacking this maybe more old school industry, right? Like you can't wait for insurers to move to straight through processing, online pricing, quoting, because it's still, I think we're more integrated with most of that type of efforts in commercial insurance right now, right? So we're thinking how can we go after these larger markets, right? Like it's maybe we're discussing with some policy admin systems about official integration. I'm not sure if this is behind NDA right now, but it's not official yet, so I can't mention name. But there's not too many of policy admin system, right? So I guess you could guess easily, right? And another is like how can we, maybe improve some of the get plugged into traditional Excel workflows more, rather than wait about them moving into APIs, right? So that's another area where we look at.
So talk to me about the founding team. You're obviously a co-founder, and sort of, how do you guys get to know each other? How does had you worked together before, and then how do you get the business off the ground? It's the ideas is great, and the practical kind of launch is another thing.
Sure. So with me and Zbigniew, we studied computer science together in Warsaw, Poland, and there's very, very good technical education in Poland. It's like we may not Poland may be not great about many. Well, but computer science, we nail it very well. I'm not saying.
Yeah.
I was back in the Silicon Valley. Zbigniew was in London, and we were kind of a growing company for a couple months. And great thing about Silicon Valley is that you can get venture capital much easier than in Europe, I would say. There, we were pre-revenue. Product was barely working. We had some clients, and we get venture capital investment. And the investors in Silicon Valley are much more investing into it. Do they like the market? Do they like the people at that stage? In Europe, it's much harder to get funding at that stage. So we get 500K back from Heavy Ventures, and given how far we've went, so she still didn't get ROI, but I think she made the right choice, right? And and then we had went through Boost VC Accelerator. We've then raised the one round led by FFVC Nefila, then the next round just a couple months ago with QB FFVC as well.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting comment you made there about it's easier to get capital, like it's easier to raise capital in Silicon Valley. What's been your experience of kind of the different cultures of like venture in maybe the US versus, I don't know, other parts of the world, the UK? Is there they're much more comfortable backing like the product, market and people, whereas basically I think, do you think they're happy to jump in earlier, generally speaking?
The Silicon Valley in particular is very risk tolerant comparing to other markets. And there's also a large amount of VCs, right? Like I think in Silicon Valley, it's probably a few times more VCs than everywhere else in the world combined, right? I think that's just my guess, but that's the feeling I have, right? But we actually, we stayed in Silicon Valley for a few years, but then we moved to New York, and just because there's not much insurance there, right? There's a great plug and play InsurTech event. We went for plug and play accelerator. It was really, really great. But mostly, there's mostly kind of innovation teams in there, but the real teams who are paying are back in, New York, Chicago, London, Bermuda, right? So we've that's why we decided to move after a while, but getting through that initial stages, Silicon Valley is great.
Yeah, very welcoming. You definitely need that kind of startup culture, I think. And Silicon Valley obviously got that in spades. I wanted to ask you about going back to the kind of something we started before, which was talking about you're a product-led company, right? So you've come up with a product idea. Does that have any inherent challenges of being sort of tech first, product first when it comes to kind of developing and growing the business?
I mean, we're becoming more sales-led or clients-led over time, right? So that's happening. That we're, product-led. I'm not like coming up with idea and saying, okay, that's what we're doing. But we're mostly just gather information from customers, right? And just product. My role I see as prioritizing which requests for customers are important, and maybe some are, but mostly it's just deciding what customers basically prioritizing between customers' requests and some infrastructure work. So if we most of our attributes, everything we added to a product, it's kind of almost we didn't came up ourselves, but we had a few clients requested it, and just based off what clients requested, we kind of did a rank each things we're doing about which clients wants it and what's the value, and we just prioritize it based on just those attributes, right? So it's not like we're we're a sales-led company in a way for a while.
Yes, it's interesting how close that relationship, especially with those early adopter clients, they're so important, aren't they, to the product development process? Like that relationship is so key. How do you kind of, in your experience, how do you develop those really good, clear lines of communication with the client? Like, how do you make that on a practical level? How do you kind of make sure you've got that really good feedback loop?
So how do I make sure I get really good feedback from clients? That's what you mean?
Yeah, on a practical level, because I think we talk about it a lot, but how do you kind of make sure those early clients are like feeding back into the sort of product development loop, or yeah, on a practical level, what did you guys do to kind of make sure that happened?
I mean, we basically have a spreadsheet of a list of things we can do, and we have another spreadsheet saying who's paying and which attributes wants people who's paying and how much they can pay, and we mostly assign to things we can do. How much revenue do you think this attribute will bring us in medium term and short term, and we decide that's how we prioritize our development. So there's, some are that's maybe 70% of development, 30% are more, fun things or things that can, more on the maybe research type of stuff, or how can we do something interesting? How can we move? But actually, some people, lots of, especially those larger insurers, they're very technical. They kind of have great understanding where the industry is going. So we value their feedback very highly about where we want to go.
So talking about the product, the imagery, you, if I understand this right, Tensorflight is the first company to provide property data on demand. Also the first to integrate these different imagery sources that we talked about at the start. How did you achieve that? And also interested about the kind of model, so the data on demand versus maybe another kind of type of interaction. So I appreciate that's a kind of two-part question. It's like, why did you go for data on demand? And then secondly, how did you manage to integrate these different imagery sources?
Yeah, sure. So, when we were starting, we've heard that was the moment, Cape Analytics just, were already on the market, and there were stories that, they, I don't know how much true, but that's what we heard from the market. They raised a large round and spent half of that round just buying imagery from Nearmap. Right. And on residential side, you almost are forced to do this because, most of stuff goes through online quotes, and online quotes are like, you have 5 seconds latency limit for, or even less on delivering the online quote. But on commercial side, even these online pricing platforms, they sometimes have 10 seconds limit. So it's not like you're getting this speed game in online quotes for commercial. Even the online quoting platforms, they ask more questions. So it's also kind of one of things of residential versus commercial. Almost in residential, you have to return data in less than 3-5 seconds. So you have to pre-analyze the imagery. But on commercial, you can do it on demand. And if you do it on demand, then firstly, cheaper because you only pay exactly for what you need, and data is fresher, right? Because you're returning exactly the best what can be delivered at this very point of quote, right? And there's pricing platforms, there's online quoting. In commercial are longer questionnaires, more questions. It's slower, so 30 seconds waiting time per property, or 15 seconds waiting time is less of an issue, right? So I think this is one of actually lots of differences about our company, right? Like one is this online processing, another one is facade, is just difference between residential versus commercial, right? Like also like in residential, most of risk is in the roof, right? So that's why you don't really need as much facades, right? While on commercial, it's more in whole structure. So that's why you need more than just the roof.
There seems to be so much opportunity here, because like artificial intelligence, computer vision are significantly sort of improving on this like manual, as you said, it's a very manual process. Now, I mean, I used to work on the claim side, and we were talking about the kind of inspection process and the cost, and it's inefficient. How do you think the industry will evolve in the next kind of 3 to 5 years in this sort of area? And yeah, what are the other kind of what you see as like really much needed automations in the space?
Yeah, of course. We are working with claims automation on the CAT side as well after hurricanes, tornadoes. So provide quick estimates of this damages. Basically, all things that need speed and scale, because if you have niche decision making, that's you're underwriting. I don't know, some stadium. There's just all things that where you have large scale can be and will be automated, but things that are require lots of deliberation, lots of thought, lots of in-person inspections, looking closely at the property. That's won't be only those mass things, right? Even on the claim side, I've seen people doing claims from cell phone photos, right? So definitely more of that, just bringing costs down by getting images, right? So on the commercial side, we also heard people of how can we source images better for our computer vision model. So there are always thoughts about getting data from customers, but that's really nothing happening in that area. So basically, to summarize, just this specialized things will remain specialized, but everything that's on the mass scale, right? So especially whole SME insurance on property will get automated, right? Like same auto is getting fully automated as well, right? Like Tractable, when we came out, it's been a great hit, and now I've hear like 5 or 10 Tractable like companies, right? Most of customer insurance will get automated as well, right? Just you don't have time to look at it. Only largest commercial, and for this largest commercial, largest structure in the portfolio, right? Even with automating larger and larger structures for so only what the role of underwriter will be is that they will come in and look at the quote or all data pre-populated by company like ours, the internal systems. Hopefully it will be us, and they just fiddle a little bit with attributes to come up with different end answer, because quality of data on commercial insurance in large commercial is so horrible right now. We've seen large companies when they underwritten even hundreds of millions of dollars of building, and their replacement cost was 10 times off, right? So they think it was $100 million structure by those $1 billion structure. And obviously, if you have errors like that, your insurance rate is going to be wildly off. But that's how the insurance actually, machines have one advantage. They're not just faster and cheaper and eventually can be more accurate, but they're also more trustable, that they won't they will get the job done no matter what, right? They won't skip it because, well, we're in a hurry.
Yeah, or they're tired or hungover or
it's funny in the story you heard about Lloyd's Market.
Yeah, I know. I like the way we talked about being hungover, and we both our heads went straight to Lloyd's. But I was going to say, does that what we're saying here, does that kind of lend? That's the biggest challenge, right, for getting this stuff over the line, the automation, the computer vision stuff. Have you come up against that? Do you think there's a cultural resistance still to some of this? And has that changed? Because you've now been doing this quite a long time. So was there more cultural resistance? Is there more acceptance that this is the way that things have to be done now?
I mean, there is, if there were, I think that's one of the reasons, if I think the biggest reason why we're not like hundreds of $1 million company yet is probably that cultural resistance in insurance industry. Like if it was my guess, we were hoping the insurance industry will, because we have great feedback from the market, from companies that are using it, that it's working and gives them great value, but we didn't crack how to get into the whole industry as a whole yet, right? We've seen, and there are a few larger companies have pricing platforms. We get great feedback from those pricing platforms. They say everything works, which is so much better now. But as a cool example for one company. But the most of the business is still on the old school way, and we're, we process, close to 10 million properties every year. But there you are a few 100K in our pipeline, and this year a few 100K, next year a few 100K more every year, right? And so there are stories like that. We have a few companies we're working with from the insurance industry, right? It's just that, and it's not like our solution is slowly growing, but this kind of modern automated pricing platform is growing within the company, right? So we've seen the industry is, and I think everyone is like, oh yeah, what you're doing is the future of insurance, but we'll do this next year. We'll keep exchanging spreadsheets for one more year, sure. Right? You have this type of thinking. So we just kind of have to figure out more, how can we get into this old school pricing platforms, and that's involves, getting into maybe doing less of that's kind of one of mistakes I think we've made in the past, that we're a data company, we're solving hard problem of properties, but fiddling with spreadsheets, it's probably not our area, but maybe we should go in some of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear about those challenges, because it's a common issue. I mean, like there's a great friend of mine who runs an insurtech, which is sadly kind of probably winding up a little bit, and everywhere that they tested, they ran projects and pilots, and they got a few clients, and their clients were like, this is brilliant, and essentially they said, you're right, but you're early, and that's the challenge, right, as well, is you've got to hit that cultural point where people shift towards accepting and buying products and services that are changing the way that things are done. So that is a big challenge. So just conscious of time, actually, Robert, but really appreciate all the time you spent with me. What's ahead for the rest of the year that you can talk about? I appreciate some of it you might be able to talk about. Is there any kind of product developments that you'll be releasing that you can talk about, or different geographies you're going into? What's the focus for the rest of the year?
Sure. So we're working through our roadmap. It's not fully set in stone yet, but definitely, we've seen lots of interest in some flammable materials. So we are improving our ACP panels models and different facade materials. So that's been a few customers gave that great feedback, that actually the famous London fire, that's I think the largest fire in UK in last couple of years was just caused by ACP panels, right? So if we can find all of those in your portfolio, that's huge saving.
Yes.
So vegetation, defensible space and DFI index, just finding this kind of information around. More of the roof condition. So right now we have a few free classes of roof condition, but customers, I think we like segmentation, what type of damage it is on the roof. For what is it? So define type of a damage and annotate it. So for we have, I would say, best in market square footage estimation right now, right? So it's not like square foot in a way that we look at the building, we look at vision parameters, and we estimate square footage, right? And one of ways of improve that is, we're running of problems with garages, attics, and so on, right? So handle those better. This kind of garages, attics, basements type of improve of a number of stories, quality of finishes, construction type, improve different categories, get more into 3D models, obliques, get some external data providers. Of course, geocoding, we always have it high on our list. New, of course, improve scalability as we've getting in the stages that we can processing millions of properties, millions of requests per year. Then it's like our old way of doing things, and it needs some change. Have more UX of web portal as well, and we're looking at this how can we get plugged into the spreadsheets workflows, right? Like how can we because we see we're mostly working with API, but we see that 90% of the market is on Excel spreadsheets, and 90% of our workflow is on API flow, and that's 10% of insurance. So how can we get into that Excel workflow? Have integration with some basically policy admin systems. So that's always the question: how can we make it easier for whole insurance to use it, not just the highest technologically sophisticated players, right?
Integration is the devil in making it work, and it's usually people have got 2 or 3 product updates, but that's a hell of a list. So you're gonna be a very busy man for the rest of the year. So I really do appreciate you taking time to be part of the podcast, and we always want to kind of give someone the opportunity to shout out. So where's the best place to contact yourself or the business if we've got some interested parties out there? LinkedIn, website, or what's the best route?
So usually it's just email address, contact@tensorflight.com, or you go to our website. There's a way of signing up for email list. But if you have a question, just contact at Tensorflight. So, I hope you or any people listening, I kind of we're open to any type of collaboration. We're down to earth people. We're happy to work with everyone. I hope we're likable. So so I'm looking forward to working with you.
You're definitely likable. I met your.
Yeah, it's not a great thing to say about.
No, I met your co-founder in a bar in Exotic Insights. So, Robert, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and appreciate you being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.